The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, stretching higher than the eye could see, with walls carved from shining black stone and glowing patterns that represented thousands of star systems. Hundreds of alien voices filled the hall, each one trying to outshout the other. Some voices were sharp like broken glass, others deep like rolling thunder, and a few hissed like steam escaping from a machine. The air was thick with tension, for the Council was in the middle of deciding the future of a war that threatened to swallow half the galaxy. But in the middle of all that noise, one rule was repeated again and again. One law that seemed untouchable, unshakable, and absolute. The words echoed through the chamber like a curse. Humans must never be allowed to fight in galactic wars. It was said in the hissing tongue of the Serkai. It was shouted in the clicking language of the Koran. It was whispered in the musical voices of the Velari. But no matter the language, the meaning was the same. Humans were forbidden. A young alien cadet, his scales still bright from youth, sat in the back rows of the chamber. His name was Karesh, and though he was too young to speak in the council, he listened with wide eyes. He had studied many species. In the academy, he knew which ones were strong, which ones were cunning, and which ones were fragile. But he had never understood the humans. They looked so small compared to most species, soft-skinned, fragile-boned, weak-lunged. They could not survive the crushing gravity of Dargol. They could not see in the dark fog of Varash. They could not hold their breath for hours like the Solari swimmers. To Karesh, humans seemed ordinary, nothing special at all. So why, he wondered, were the most powerful leaders in the galaxy so afraid of them? Down near the floor of the chamber, a group of humans sat quietly in their council seats. Their uniforms were plain, without the shining armor or decorative crests that many aliens wore. They did not shout, did not hiss, did not argue. They simply listened, their faces calm, their eyes watching. Other species mocked them, sneering. At their silence, one Velari elder leaned toward his neighbor and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Look at them. Always pretending to be civilized. They should thank us for letting them sit here at all." Laughter rippled through the chamber, but it was uneasy laughter. Behind the mockery, there was something else, something Karesh noticed. Fear. The council. Meeting dragged on for hours, voices clashing like blades. The war at the edge of the Orion Arm was worsening. An enemy fleet was destroying colonies one after another, and many council members demanded more soldiers. Yet every time a commander suggested calling upon the humans, the chamber grew silent. It was not the silence of respect. It was the silence of dread. Karesh's tail twitched nervously. He leaned closer to his commander, an older Serkai officer with scars across his chest. "Why do they forbid the humans from fighting?" Karesh asked quietly. "If the war is so desperate, why not use every soldier?" The commander did not look at him. His slitted eyes stared straight ahead, and his voice was low, almost like a growl. "You are too young to ask that question." "But I must know," Karesh whispered. The commander finally turned his head, his scales dull with age and memory. "Pray you never find out." Karesh felt a chill run through him, though the chamber air was warm. He turned his eyes back to the humans. They sat as still as statues, giving away nothing. Yet he could not shake the feeling that there was a storm. Hidden beneath their calm faces, Captain Elias was one of the humans in the chamber. His hair was streaked with gray, and his eyes had the hard look of a man who had seen too much war. He heard the insults, the mocking laughter, the half-hidden fear, but he remained silent. He had learned long ago that words mattered little in this place. What mattered was memory. And every alien in that chamber carried a memory of what humans were capable of. Some pretended to forget. Some laughed to hide their fear. But none of them had truly forgotten. As the debates grew louder, Elias let his mind drift back to Earth. He remembered the smell of rain on ruined cities, the cries of soldiers who refused to surrender, the firestorms that had turned night into day. He remembered battles where humans had been outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, and still had won. Those memories were the real reason for the silence that followed whenever someone spoke of unleashing human armies. The galaxy did not forbid humans because they were weak. The galaxy forbade them because they remembered what happened the last time humans fought with all their strength. The meeting ended without resolution. The council remained divided, voices echoing through the hall long after the leaders had left. Karesh stayed behind, his eyes fixed on the humans as they walked out of the chamber in silence. He could not understand it. He could not stop thinking about it. That night in his quarters aboard the Academy ship, Karesh searched through the learning archives. He typed human war history. The screen blinked. Access denied. He tried again, searching human battle records. Access denied. Confusion turned into curiosity. Curiosity turned into obsession. Why was everything about human wars locked away? Every other species had their histories open for students. The wars of the Velari, the conquests of the Koran, the tragedies of the Solari, all of it could be studied. But the humans, forbidden. Karesh tried again, searching deeper. Finally he found a fragment, a simple report filed centuries ago. It spoke of a battle on a planet Karesh had never heard of, fought between humans and an empire long extinct. The report ended with a single line: casualties beyond measure. Victory claimed by humans. The words sent a shiver through him. He wanted to know more. He needed to know more. But the file closed itself, locked by higher authority. Karesh did not sleep that night. His mind swirled with questions. Why would the council hide history? What were they afraid of? The next day, during a training exercise, Karesh found himself near Captain Elias. The human stood apart from the others, watching with calm eyes as alien cadets practiced drills. Karesh hesitated, then approached. "Captain," he said softly, "may I ask you something?" Elias turned, his expression unreadable. "You may ask. Why are your people forbidden from fighting?" Karesh asked. His voice was careful, respectful, but filled with curiosity. For a long moment, Elias said nothing. His eyes studied Karesh, as if measuring the weight of the question. Finally, he answered in a quiet voice. "Because the galaxy remembers." Karesh frowned. "Remembers? What?" Elias looked past him, toward the stars. His voice was low, heavy with memory. "What happens when we fight?" Karesh waited for more, but Elias said nothing else. He simply turned and walked away, leaving the young cadet with more questions. Then answers. The council chamber would meet again in a few days. The war at the edge of the Orion Arm was worsening, and pressure was rising. Karesh knew that the debate would return, and so would the whispers, the laughter, the fear. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Somewhere in the hidden past of humanity lay a truth so terrible, so powerful, that the entire galaxy had sworn never to let it happen again. And yet, as Karesh watched the stars flicker outside the viewing window, he could not escape a single thought. If the war grew worse, if the enemy continued to advance, if the council grew desperate enough, the humans might be unleashed. The council chamber had returned to silence, but Karesh could not stop thinking about the words he had heard. Because the galaxy remembers. That sentence stayed in his mind like an echo. It followed him through the long corridors of the Koduv Academy ship, through the training fields, and even in his dreams. He was young, yes, but he was not a fool. Something was being hidden from him, from every cadet, perhaps from every species except the humans themselves. Karesh tried again to access the archives. The glowing console lit up before him, and once more he typed "Human Wars." The response came back instantly. Access denied. He pressed harder, his fingers tapping quickly. Human conflicts. Access denied. Earth military history. Access denied. He hissed in frustration, his tail striking the metal floor. A fellow cadet, A tall Valari with silver skin passed by and laughed. Still trying to learn about the Death Worlders? Forget it, Karesh. That knowledge is locked for a reason. But why? Karesh demanded. The Valari's eyes glittered, but his smile was mocking. Because even our elders fear what you are. Trying to uncover. Do yourself a favor and stop before you find yourself in trouble. Karesh narrowed his eyes. The warning only made him more determined. Later that night, he found a quiet corner in the data vault. The glowing consoles hummed softly, and the cold light reflected off his scales. He lowered his voice and whispered a code his commander had once shown him for research. For a moment, the screen hesitated, then something appeared. Not much, just fragments. But fragments were enough. The first file showed a battlefield covered in smoke. Giant alien war machines lay broken, their metal bodies torn apart. And in the middle of the destruction stood humans. Small, thin, fragile-looking, but they were still standing while machines twice their size lay in ruins. Their faces were covered in dirt and blood, their eyes burning with determination. The report attached to the image was short. Enemy force destroyed. Human survivors, 12%. Victory claimed. Karesh's heart pounded. He scrolled further. Another fragment. A different war. A different planet. The record said, outnumbered 10-1. Human forces refused retreat. Enemy leadership eliminated. War ended. There were no long explanations, no careful details. Just cold numbers and a conclusion that always ended the same way. Humans had won. The young cadet sat back in his chair. His claws tapped nervously against the console. How could such a fragile species survive battles like that? How could they win against enemies larger, stronger, more advanced? None of it made sense. The next day, during training, Karesh's mind was elsewhere. His instructor shouted commands, but Karesh barely heard them. His thoughts returned again and again to those fragments. He was so distracted that he nearly collided with another cadet during combat drills. The instructor barked at him to focus, but Karesh could not. He had seen something that would not leave him alone. After the session, he found himself near Captain Elias again. The human officer stood quietly, arms folded, watching the cadets train. Karesh hesitated, then gathered his courage. "Captain," he said softly, "I have seen the records." Elias's eyes turned toward him, sharp and cold. "What records?" "The old battles," Karesh whispered. "The ones the Council tries to hide." For a long moment Elias did not reply. His gaze was heavy, like the weight of a mountain pressing down on Karesh. Finally the human spoke. "Then you have seen only shadows." "The truth is darker," Karesh swallowed. "Why does the Council forbid your people from war?" Elias's jaw tightened. He looked away, staring at the stars beyond the training dome. "Because when we fight, we do not stop. We fight until nothing is left, enemy or ourselves. That is what the Council fears." The words chilled Karesh more than any cold night. He wanted to ask more, but Elias turned and walked away before he could. That evening, Karesh could not rest. He returned to the data vault and pushed deeper. His claws trembled as he hacked through the barriers, ignoring the warnings flashing across the screen. He needed to know. He had to know. At last, a hidden archive opened. A grainy holorecord flickered to life before his eyes. He saw a planet in flames, its skies dark with smoke and fire. He saw alien ships falling, one after another, their engines burning as they crashed into the ground. And he saw humans ragged, wounded, half-starved, but still advancing. They carried weapons in shaking hands, and even when their weapons failed, they fought with their bare fists, with rocks, with anything they could hold. The enemy was larger, stronger, with armor and claws, but it did not matter. The humans did not stop. They would not stop. The recording ended with silence. The report appeared, only a few words. Enemy eradicated. Human losses, catastrophic. victory achieved. Karesh felt sick. His stomach twisted, his scales felt cold. It was not only victory he had seen, it was something else, something ruthless, something terrifying. Humans did not win because they were stronger. They won because they refused to accept defeat, even if it meant their own destruction. The next day, Karesh could not hide his thoughts. During a strategy class, he asked the instructor directly, "Why are the humans forbidden? What are you all hiding from us?" The classroom went silent. The instructor, an old Valari, froze for a moment. His silver eyes narrowed. "Cadet Karesh," he said slowly, "there are questions you are too young to ask. If you continue, you will bring shame to your house and danger to yourself." But Karesh was no longer afraid of warnings. He needed answers. He stayed behind after class and confronted the instructor again. "I have seen the files," he said. "I know the council is hiding the truth." The Valari's eyes darkened. For a moment, Karesh thought the instructor would strike him. But instead, the elder sighed, his shoulders sinking. "You are foolish, young one, but you are not wrong. The humans are forbidden not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. Not strong in body, not strong in numbers, but strong in will. When they fight, they break wars. They change battles into nightmares. They do not stop until their enemy is gone, even if it destroys them too." Karesh's voice trembled. "That is why their history is locked away." "Yes," the Valari whispered, "the galaxy fears them, and with good reason." That night, Karesh returned to his quarters, his mind heavy. He remembered the images, the smoke, the blood, the burning skies. He remembered the way Captain Elias had looked at him, eyes filled with memory and warning. He understood now why the council mocked humans in public, but feared them in secret. Still, Karesh felt a strange pull inside him. Fear, yes, but also respect. He had never seen such determination in any species. Perhaps the humans were dangerous. Perhaps they were forbidden. But they were also something more. Something the galaxy did not want to admit. That as he drifted to uneasy sleep, Karesh whispered to himself, "If the war grows worse, will they be called again?" And in the silence of his quarters, he almost thought he heard an answer. Not in words, but in the echo of those hollow recordings. The sound of footsteps marching through fire. The sound of voices shouting through smoke. The sound of humans who would not surrender. The whispers of the past were no longer whispers. They were warnings. And Karesh knew that soon, very soon, the galaxy would face the truth it had tried to bury. The Galactic Council chamber was restless again. The enemy at the edge of the Orion Arm had destroyed another colony, and panic spread across the gathered species. The hall was filled with shouts, clicks, hisses, and roars. Leaders argued about sending more fleets, about raising more soldiers, about forming alliances. Yet through all the noise, one thing had not changed. The law remained the same. Humans were forbidden from war. Karesh sat in the balcony with other cadets, his eyes fixed on the council floor. Since discovering the Forbidden's files, his thoughts had been filled with nothing else. He remembered the images of humans fighting in the fire, refusing to stop, refusing to die quietly. He remembered Captain Elias's words, "Because the galaxy remembers." And now, as the council shouted and begged for soldiers, Karesh wanted to stand and scream. Why keep the humans away when they could save lives? Why hold back the one species the enemy feared? A Solari counselor slammed his scaled hand on the table. "We need more troops. The frontier will fall if we do not act." Another voice, sharp and cruel, answered, "Then call the humans." At once, the chamber grew silent. Hundreds of eyes turned, some wide with fear, others narrowed with suspicion. The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. The Valari elder stood, his silver skin glowing under the chamber lights. "Never," he hissed. You know what happens when humans fight. You know what they bring with them. Do not speak such madness. Koran commander leaned forward, his mandibles clicking. We lose colonies, we lose fleets. And you forbid us from using the one weapon that could turn the tide? Perhaps the council fears victory more than defeat. Murmurs spread. Some nodded in agreement, others whispered angrily. Karesh's tail twitched as he watched. For the first time, voices were rising in favor of letting humans fight. Yet every time someone supported the idea, fear silenced them. Down below, the humans sat in their seats as always, quiet, unreadable. They showed no anger, no pride, no fear. They simply waited. Captain Elias sat among them, his eyes scanning the room, his expression calm, but heavy. He had heard this debate before. He had lived through it. He knew what would come next. A veteran of the council stood slowly, his body scarred, his voice trembling with age. He had fought in wars long past, wars that most had forgotten. But he remembered. His eyes fell on the humans as he spoke. You want to unleash them? Then listen to me. I fought beside them once. I saw what they did. We were losing. We had no hope. Then the humans came. At first, we thought them weak, fragile. But they fought like nothing we had ever seen. They fought when they were wounded, when they were broken, when their blood poured from them. And they did not stop. Do you understand? They did not stop. Not even when the enemy begged for mercy. Not even when the world around them burned. The war ended, yes, but so did everything else. Nothing was left alive, only ashes and silence, and we called it victory. The chamber grew cold and quiet. Karesh felt the words like a blade against his scales. He could almost see it, the battlefield. The fire, the humans standing among the ruins. That another voice rose from the chamber. A younger leader, one who had not lived through those old wars. Are we to fear them forever? We face extinction now. If the enemy consumes us, what good is this law? Better to burn than to vanish. The elder veteran shook his head. You speak of fire as if you know it, but you do not. Pray you never. See what humans call war. Karesh's heart pounded. He understood now why the history was hidden, why the council feared them. Humans did not fight for conquest. They fought for survival, and in their survival, everything else was destroyed. Later, in the academy mess hall, cadets argued about the council meeting. Some mocked the humans, repeating old insults about weakness. Others whispered uneasily, remembering the elders' words. Karesh sat apart, silent, thinking. When the room cleared, he walked outside and found Captain Elias standing by the viewing window, looking out at the stars. You heard them, Karesh said quietly. Elias did not turn. I heard. They fear you, Karesh whispered. They should, Elias answered simply. Karesh stepped closer. Why? What is it about your people that terrifies them so much? The human finally turned his eyes on him. Because we do not fight like them. We do not fight for glory. We do not fight for honor. We fight to live. And when you fight to live, there is nothing you will not do. Karesh swallowed hard. They say you do not stop. Elias's voice was calm, but his eyes were dark. We don't. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Elias turned. Back to the stars. Pray, cadet, that the council never changes its mind. For if they do, you will learn what fear truly is. Karesh left him there, his mind burning with questions and dread. Days passed, and the enemy advanced closer. Reports came: daily colonies falling, fleets destroyed, cities turned to dust. Pressure in the council grew heavier. More voices spoke. Of the humans, some demanded their armies be unleashed. Others shouted that it was madness. The chamber split into two camps, and fear spread like a shadow across the galaxy. Karesh noticed the change outside the council too. Among ordinary people, whispers traveled through markets, docking bays, and stations. Some asked, "Why not let the humans fight? Are they not soldiers?" Others answered, "Better to die than unleash them." You don't survive war with humans, you survive them, if you're lucky. The phrase stuck in Karesh's mind. Survive them. Not survive with them, but survive them. What did that mean? Did it mean that humans destroyed not only their enemies, but everything around them? Or did it mean that even allies were not safe when humans went to war? One night, Karesh sat in his quarters, staring at the stars. He remembered the files, the hollow recordings, the words of Captain Elias, the warning of the elder veteran. Slowly, the truth formed in his mind. The humans were not just soldiers. They were something else, something more dangerous. They were survival made flesh. They would burn everything around them, themselves included, if it meant they could win. And that was why the galaxy feared them. The next council meeting was even louder than before. The war was worsening, the enemy growing stronger. Desperate voices shouted for action. Let the humans fight. What good are they if they sit in silence while our worlds burn? Others shouted back, "You fools! You would unleash fire on the galaxy itself." The debate raged, but Karesh no longer needed to hear the details. He understood the truth now. The fear of humanity was not a mystery anymore. It was a memory, a scar the galaxy had tried to cover, but one that still bled whenever touched Dot. And as Karesh watched the humans rise from their seats to leave the chamber, silent as always, he felt the weight of that fear settle on his shoulders. For deep inside, he knew something terrible. The war was spreading too fast, too far. The council was growing desperate. And when desperation ruled, laws were broken, bans were lifted, and old nightmares returned. The humans were forbidden from galactic wars. But Karesh knew it was only a matter of time before the council broke its own law. And when that day came, the galaxy would learn again what fear truly meant. The war spread like fire across dry fields. Every day the council received darker news. Colonies lost, fleets destroyed, whole populations gone. The enemy moved with speed and power that no one had expected. Systems that had been safe for centuries were now nothing but burning debris in the void. Fear filled every chamber, every home, every mind. The Galactic Council was breaking under the pressure. The chamber that once echoed with debates now shook with chaos. Voices no longer argued, they screamed. Some demanded more fleets, others demanded retreat, and many demanded answers. And again, as always, the whispers rose. Let the humans fight. Call the forbidden ones. Karesh sat in the balcony, his hands gripping the railing so tightly his claws dug into the metal. He had seen the secret records. He had listened to the veterans. He had spoken to Captain Elias. He knew the truth now, or at least part of it. The galaxy did not forbid humans because of weakness. They forbade them because of what happened when humans fought without limits. Yet as he listened to the council tearing itself apart, Karesh felt the heavy pull of desperation. Perhaps the others were right. Perhaps it was time to call them. The Solari counselor stood tall, his scaled body shaking. "We are losing. My people are losing. Do you not see the reports? Entire oceans boiled, entire cities erased. And still you refuse to call them?" The Velari elder rose at once, silver skin glowing in fury. "You speak of summoning them as if it is salvation. It is not salvation, it is damnation. You want to unleash the fire that burned half the Orion spur to ash centuries ago? You want to bring nightmares back into the stars?" A Koran commander slammed his claws on the table. "Better nightmares than extinction." The chamber roared in fury. Some shouted for the humans, some cursed the very thought. The air felt heavy, filled with dread. Karesh looked down at the human seats. As always, they sat silent. Captain Elias was there, watching the council with calm eyes, but his jaw was tight. Karesh realized something in that moment. The humans were not asking to fight. They were waiting. Silent, patient, unreadable. As if they already knew how this would end out later. Outside the chamber, Karesh followed Captain Elias through the halls. The human walked slowly, his boots echoing against the metal floors. "Captain," Karesh called softly. Elias stopped then. Turned, his expression unreadable. "They are breaking," Karesh said. "The council cannot hold much longer. They will call you." Elias studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "Perhaps. Do you want this?" Karesh asked, voice almost a whisper. Elias's eyes narrowed. "What I want does not matter. What matters is survival. The council will not call us until they are desperate enough. And when they do, it will already be too late." Karesh swallowed. "Why too late?" "Because once we are unleashed, there is no going back," Elias said. "The war will not end. It will consume everything." Karesh felt his chest tighten. He wanted to argue, but deep inside he knew Elias spoke the truth. Days passed. The war grew worse. Reports spread faster than the council could hide them. Refugee. Ships arrived at Central Worlds, carrying broken survivors who whispered of fire and terror. Fear turned into anger. Riots broke out in cities, demanding the council use every weapon at their disposal. The pressure became unbearable. Finally, the council called another emergency meeting. The chamber was darker than usual, shadows pooling in the high corners. Leaders sat stiffly, their faces carved with exhaustion. No one shouted this time. Instead, a heavy silence filled the air, broken only by a single voice. "We must call them." The voice came from a young counselor, one whose homeworld had been lost just days before. His face was pale, his voice steady with grief. "My people are gone, burned to ash. If the humans had fought, perhaps they would have lived. If you keep forbidding them, more worlds will die. So I say it now, lift the ban, call the humans." Silence followed. Then another voice agreed, then another. Slowly, like cracks spreading through stone, more voices joined. Not shouting, not mocking, but heavy with despair. "Call the humans." The Valari elder stood, trembling with fury. "You fools! Do you not understand what you are about to do? You will bring death not only to the enemy, but to us all. Humans do not fight wars, they end them. They end everything." A veteran raised his scarred hand. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "He is right, I have seen it. When they fight, the enemy falls, but so does everything else. The battlefield becomes a graveyard for friend and foe. Alike, you do not win with humans. You survive them, if you are lucky." Karesh's heart pounded as he listened. The chamber seemed to shake with the weight of the decision. He looked at Elias. The human's face gave nothing away. He sat still, eyes steady, like a man who had seen this before. At last, the High Chancellor stood. Her voice was cold, her face pale. "The ban was created to protect us all, but now we face extinction. If the enemy reaches the core, there will be no council, no galaxy left to protect. The choice is clear." She looked toward the humans. "The ban is lifted." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some shouted in agreement, others screamed in despair. But the decision was made. Karesh's tail curled tightly against the floor. He looked at Elias again. The human rose slowly, his movements calm, deliberate. He bowed his head slightly too. "The council, as you wish," he said simply. That was all. No speech, no demand, no roar of triumph. Just quiet acceptance. And somehow that silence was more terrifying than any threat. In the days that followed, human fleets prepared. Warships long held in reserve emerged from hidden docks. Soldiers trained in silence, their eyes grim. They did not cheer, they did not celebrate. They moved with the calm precision of those who knew what was coming. Karesh watched from the observation decks, his chest tight. He had wanted answers for so long, But now that he had them, he almost wished he did not. Everywhere. In the galaxy, the news spread. Some celebrated, believing salvation had come. Others trembled, knowing nightmares were about to return. The fear of humanity had been broken, but at a terrible cost. One evening, Karesh stood at the viewing window of the Academy ship. Stars burned brightly against the void, unaware of the storms about to come. Elias stood beside him, quiet as always. "They called you," Karesh whispered. "They did," Elias answered. "And now?" "Now," Elias said softly, "the galaxy will remember again." Karesh turned to him. "Can they survive it?" Elias's eyes remained fixed on the stars. "That depends," he said. "Not on us. On whether they can survive what we are." Karesh shivered. For the first time, he understood the full weight of the fear. It was not the enemy that terrified the galaxy most. It was the humans themselves. And now, for the first time in centuries, the humans were going to war.
The galaxy held its breath. Everywhere, systems waited, colonies trembled, and fleets paused in uncertainty. Humans had been called. After centuries of prohibition, after countless warnings, after whispered memories of past wars, the Council had finally unleashed the Forbidden Ones. Karesh stood in the observation deck of the Academy ship, his claws gripping the railing. He watched as human warships moved through the void, engines blazing softly, weapons silent for now. Yet there was a presence about them, a calm that felt dangerous. Not the excitement of soldiers eager to fight. Not the fear of those who knew they might die. But the stillness of something that had already seen the storm and knew exactly how to survive it. Captain Elias walked beside him, silent as ever. "They are ready," he said, his voice calm but heavy. Karesh's tail twitched nervously. "Ready to fight?" Elias shook his head slowly. "They are ready to change war itself." Karesh frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias's eyes were distant, as if he were remembering battles long past. "We do not fight the way others fight. We do not follow rules or honor. We survive. And in surviving, we alter everything. The enemy may think they win, but they will not. Not as long as we live." The first encounter happened at the edge of a star system that had been reduced to rubble. Alien forces had been moving through quietly, expecting minimal resistance. They did not expect humans. The humans approached silently, their ships small but swift. The enemy laughed when they saw them, mocking what they thought were weak fighters. Then the first human fleet struck. Precision weapons hit critical points, disabling the enemy ships without wasting fire. Smaller attacks spread chaos, confusing even the most disciplined alien commanders. Karesh watched in awe and fear. The humans did not just fight, they controlled the battlefield. Every strike was calculated, every maneuver deliberate. The enemy tried to respond, but their forces were scattered before they could even organize. Ships collided, explosions flared, and panic spread faster than the humans could have imagined. On the battlefield, human soldiers moved with the same eerie calm. On one ravaged planet, Karesh saw troops advancing through smoke and fire. Alien warriors charged, thinking their strength would crush them. But the humans did not flee, they did not panic. They used their small numbers to their advantage, striking where the enemy was weakest, luring larger forces into traps, and never stopping. Even when wounded, even when surrounded, they kept moving, kept fighting, kept winning. Karesh's stomach twisted as he watched. The stories, the holo recordings, the council warnings, all were true. And yet, seeing it live was different. Terrifying. Humans did not just defeat the enemy, they reshaped the war itself. Whole battalions vanished without a trace, not because they lost, but because the humans made the battlefield unrecognizable. Planets burned, starports exploded, fleets fell apart in minutes. And the humans moved through it all, silent and unyielding. Back on the observation deck, Karesh turned to Elias. They are unstoppable." Elias nodded slowly. "They are not unstoppable. They are relentless. and that is enough to terrify anyone. News from other systems arrived quickly. Allies who had welcomed the humans now whispered nervously. Even those who feared the enemy most began to fear the humans themselves. The once celebrated saviors became something else, an unstoppable force, a tide that could not be held back. On one devastated colony, Karesh saw the aftermath. Alien survivors stumbled through ash and debris, looking for answers. Their leaders had fled, fleets destroyed, cities leveled. And in the distance, humans stood silently, weapons lowered, observing, waiting, judging. Some whispered to each other, "They win, but at what cost?" Karesh felt it too. He had wanted to see humans fight, wanted to understand why they were forbidden. Now he understood. The Council had not feared human weakness. They had feared their power, their will, their unwillingness to stop. Weeks passed, and the humans continued their campaign. Everywhere they went, the enemy faltered. Entire fleets surrendered, not because they were defeated, but because the humans had already broken the rules of battle. Every move they made was unpredictable. Every strategy a surprise. Allies and enemies alike were caught in the same current of fear and awe. Karesh began to understand the true cost. Humans did not just fight, they reshaped reality itself. Systems would never be the same. Colonies would be rebuilt differently, fleets rebuilt differently, and no war would ever be fought in the same way again. They were not conquerors, not heroes, not saviors in the traditional sense. They were something far more dangerous. A force that could not be ignored, and once unleashed, could never be contained. One night, Karesh found himself walking with Elias on a quiet moon. Stars sparkled overhead, cold and distant, unaware of the fires burning below. Karesh's voice trembled. "Do you regret it? Being called?" Elias looked at him, eyes dark and unreadable. "Regret is for those who fail. We do not fail. We survive. And when we survive, everything else changes." Karesh swallowed. "Even allies?" "Even allies," Elias said simply. "We do not fight for others. We fight to live. And when you do that, you cannot choose what is spared. Only what survives. And often, that is, not what you expected." Karesh's mind spun. He remembered the council, the warnings, the old veterans. He understood now why the ban had existed. Humans were forbidden not because they were weak, but because they were too powerful, too unpredictable, too relentless. And yet, in the fires of war, Karesh also felt something else. Respect. Awe. A strange sense of hope. Humans fought not for glory, not for honor, not for conquest. They fought because they had to. And that simple, raw desire to live, to survive, was enough to shake the stars themselves. In the end, the enemy was defeated. Entire fleets vanished, planets were liberated, colonies saved, but not without cost. Fire and destruction followed wherever humans went. They did not celebrate victory. They did not cheer. They simply moved on, quiet, determined, unstoppable. Karesh watched from the observation deck as the humans returned to their ships. The galaxy was safe, for now, but Karesh knew the truth. He understood the Council's fear. He understood Captain Elias's warnings. The humans were no longer forbidden, but the galaxy would never forget what they were capable of. And deep inside, Karesh knew one thing with certainty. The humans had fought, yes. They had survived. And in surviving, they had changed the galaxy forever. No law, no council, no empire could ever contain them again. The galaxy had learned the shocking truth. Humans were forbidden from war, not because they were weak, but because once humans fought, no star system, no fleet, no army, could ever be the same again. And as Karesh turned to watch the stars, he felt both awe and fear, for he knew the humans would fight again someday. And when they did, nothing, not ally, not enemy, not planet, not star, would ever survive unchanged. The humans had returned to silence. But the memory of their power would echo forever across the galaxy.